On this episode of Medical Mystery.
Something mysterious is lurking in the waters.
Really?
Really what?
It's super intense, bro.
Does it sound like a voiceover for some mysterious movie?
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds super professional.
Something mysterious is lurking in the waters. Is that better?
Sure.
Just a couple weeks ago, a young boy died from something invisible but deadly.
Well, you know what's not invisible but deadly?
What?
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah. Definitely not invisible.
Medicine. What a bloody and mysterious business. Welcome back, friends. This is your dose of Medical Mystery Monday with YogiDoc, where we dig deep into true crime for a sense of wonder with a holistic twist of medicine. So grab that glass of wine or cup of whiskey, because we are here, friends. I'm your hostess, thriving with the mostest, occupational therapist, Dr. Tiffany. And on this ride of life, by my side is my co-host and physician, Dr. Shaz. So get ready and buckle up, because we're thriving on in. All right, Shazzy, we're back from our break.
I know.
We were
That was
there.
nice.
We were there, and then we were gone for a moment. We had a little bit of took some time and had a personal break.
Yeah, it was nice to have a little break. Yeah. What you been doing?
I've been with you, right? Well, I've been working on a little bit of a personal blog known as TMI, which will be down in the show notes a little bit. But I rearranged this office. Well, as I say office, it's a closet. But I rearranged it to set up more work-friendly space.
Yeah, for those of you that can't see my face, I'm just looking around because there's so much stuff in here.
Yeah, I need to figure out what I'm going to be doing with this post-it note section, and
it's like wall tiles.
I just feel like we're going to be moving soon, so I don't want to invest in anything yet, but I really feel like I need to upgrade to a sit-stand desk because I'm definitely aching. But I know I've been doing that, but so we've been watching a lot of new shows like Netflix, Hulu, all over the place, Disney, everything. Shaz even watched Hocus Pocus for the first time, so that was exciting. But out of all the things that we've been watching on our break, what has been your favorite?
Probably the unresolved or unsolved, Tupac, Biggie, Terry. That was amazing.
That was your favorite.
That was amazing. Yeah, and it was great because it was nostalgic, from being born in the 80s and living through the 90s.
It was very well done, I will say. I agree.
And even though Josh Duhamel was on there, he didn't ruin it.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't ruin it for you.
Yeah, freaking Josh Duhamel. But he did fine, so I'll give him props,
Yeah. I would have to say, though, I did enjoy that as well, but I would have to say American Vandal was on the top of my list.
You gotta watch that. Yeah,
I mean,
y'all gotta watch that.
First of all, these people's high schools are all crazy. I don't remember doing this stuff. We didn't do that kind of. Well, we did stuff, but not like that. I don't know, or
kids these days do some stuff that we didn't do.
And we didn't have social media that.
That's true too.
I mean, I had MySpace.
I didn't even have a cell phone. I didn't get a cell phone until I was in my mid to late 20s.
You sound old right now.
No, I just didn't want one. I didn't want people to be able to get a hold of me at any time.
Well, I wanted to play Snake.
Whatever. I didn't want to be bothered by people.
All right.
No one needs to know where I am.
Well, it's an amazing show. And I mean, it caught my attention because, there's some poop episodes involved that caught my attention.
Or vandalism, yeah.
And,
interesting.
and I wasn't sure what to expect. I was kind of okay, this sounds... It might be crazy, but it is so well done, the documentary style to it. Definitely worth a watch, I'd say.
I agree.
Definitely worth a watch. And I've been needing that little bit of a break because I've been working a lot on so we still have our big surprise coming out way later that YogiDoc has coming out.
Surprises.
But YogiDoc surprise is a while out right now. It's a big project we've been working on, but TeleThrive has something new we're going to be launching soon. We're going to be launching our academy here soon. So I've been needing the break to watch some shows, and I've really been excited that we've been able to get away and do that.
Been working a lot of stuff?
Yeah, I've been just on the computer between getting the courses together and the workbooks and the ebooks and all the things that are going to be launched soon. It's it's been quite a lot. So it's nice to kind of like
courses for what?
So it's for our TeleThrive section, like I had mentioned, like so for my company. So it's occupational therapy based, like for parents mostly. A lot of sensory processing.
Okay, so like OT stuff for autism. Okay.
Pediatric cool. OT kind of stuff.
Okay.
So that's exciting. I've been looking forward to that. But we live out here in Las Vegas, and the weather has definitely dipped and changed this last couple of weeks. Like it went from like 100 to 40, like I feel like over.
I mean, probably 60, but that's still cold for us. Maybe 40 at night, but
the other day I left the house, it was 47 when I left the house. I was like, gross.
I mean, yeah, it happens. It happens in the desert. Yeah.
But we do, like, even though we're out here in the desert, so, of course, when it does drop, it drops. But we do have a little bit of water out here. The Colorado River comes by, and we have you're laughing at me because I stumbled. The Colorado River runs by. And, we have Hoover Dam right here that's super popular. So then that creates the reservoir for Lake Mead, and we have Las Vegas Lake and all that fun stuff.
So we live out here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, and a lot's been changing too. Like the weather's been going crazy. It's
hot,
like
cold,
super cold recently, and I am not a big fan of the cold.
It's super cold, but
it is super cold. The other day I left the house and it was like 47 degrees.
And when it gets below 60, all these like puffer jackets come out. And
for me, if it gets below 80,
I'm still wearing my t-shirt.
Hashtag Florida girl.
I moved here from Michigan a few years ago. I'm fine. Anyways, everyone thinks we're the desert, so it does get cold in the desert. That's true.
It does.
But we actually have a body of water or two.
Yeah, we do have some water out here because like the Colorado River flows through, right? And,
you got the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, and so everybody loves going to the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, it creates the reservoir. And
so you have Lake Mead right there. And so that's Lake Mead Recreation Center. It's a national recreational center. It's part of the national park system. And it's pretty big. I mean, and then you also have like Lake Las Vegas, which comes off of that a little bit too. But I've definitely been down to Lake Mead quite often. We've been too. We went through the tunnel trail.
I mean, it's not really a trail.
Well, it's like a walking path.
Walking path. There you go.
But they call it a trail. I would call it a walking path. It's not like a hike or anything like that. But it goes along Lake Mead. It's very beautiful, and it ends at the very end. So it's like a in and out back kind of trail. And when you get to the tip at the end of it, there's like a part where you could veer off to the left, and you end up at the top of the parking garage to Hoover Dam. So you can walk down the stairs and you can walk across Hoover Dam, and you're there. And when you're ready to go back, you can just take it back. So it's like nice to go take a picnic out there, kind of go spend the day and hang, and the trail is pretty, it's not like asphalt or anything like that, but people take strollers on it, and it's pretty wide and like roomy in that perspective. It goes right against the water, so it's very beautiful. But there's a ton of trails out there in Lake Mead that I definitely enjoy. And then you have Willow Beach, which is popular. That's still part of that.
That's true.
Section. So that's like the side of the Colorado River. So it's like colder water over there compared to like the Lake Mead side. But yeah. So like Hoover Dam is super popular and whatnot. But like I was super shocked because, all of this stuff going on. I'm sitting here like I was saying, like I've been working on the Academy stuff and all these things that's been launching, and we've had some personal stuff going on. So I felt like I've been super busy. So like I just caught a glimpse of this story. And I needed to know more about it. So I was just like, all right, so like let's figure out something more about it. And so apparently like this Las Vegas teen. So one of the things you have to understand too is like Lake Mead is part in Las Vegas and part in Arizona. So like it crosses the Nevada-Arizona area.
But the lake,
the Hoover Dam crosses like right in the middle.
Las Vegas though.
Yeah.
In Nevada. So.
Yeah. But the Hoover Dam like crosses over. So, this Las Vegas teen goes out, this is about like late September, early October time, and goes out to this Kingman Wash area, which is on the Arizona side of the Colorado River, the reservoir behind like the Hoover Dam. So, so we're on that side. He's from Las Vegas, but we're on that side, right? And, they never, in any of the stories or anything like that, they kept a lot of his information very confidential. He is a child. He's underage, so I can imagine. So, and also to respect the family.
And patient privacy.
Yes, yes. So I can understand why the news didn't give out a ton of information. So his exact age is unknown, but about teenage
years
is what we're looking at. Yeah. And so I was just like kind of blown away that this this happened. This Las Vegas teen goes out there and he dies from this. And they're like, this brain eating parasite takes him down. And I'm like, what in the world happens? How does that not leave you? Like, first of all, like, I am so sorry for his family. Like, what a huge shock that is. And like, no parent should ever have to outlive their children. But I'm also like, I needed to know more. Like, it was not something that I thought could happen. So it's something I needed to learn about a little bit more. Like, I know we talk about parasites and whatnot in school, but it's just like, it's so close to home. And of course I had to know more. So then as I like looked into it a little bit further, I did learn that this is not actually that common completely. So, but it's something we totally need to be aware of because it can happen to you. And it like literally just happened. But there's only 154 cases of this infection and death with this amoeba.
Amoeba.
Amoeba. I got it. All right. In the U.S., like ever since, I think it was like 1962. So I don't know. I just felt like that it doesn't happen too often. And so then I needed to know more.
The death was not like in the water. It happened.
Yeah. The death doesn't happen in the water. He was just infected in the water.
And got sick later. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know there was that few cases.
And it's the only case of the parasite associated with Lake Mead, according to like the state and local, health officials and such. But out of that like 154 cases that we've had in, over this period since 1962, more than like almost half of them are in Texas and Florida. So I can only imagine that's like got to be something with the humidity or the warmth and whatnot. So I'm sure you can teach me more about that in a moment. But yeah, this is the only one that's been reported in Nevada before this week, like the scenario. So it's definitely wild out there. And this definitely, even though this happens more often in young males and there's not really a clear reason why, I can only just assume it's because they dive in the water some more, they're like,
and your head has to submerge
playing
under
around
the water.
a lot more. Yeah.
Girls don't want to get their hair wet, so they don't.
We don't want to get our hair wet. We don't want you to mess up our pores. We're gonna be here and just brown,
or just be at the water.
Let it baste us, just turn us. Yeah. So I was completely blown away. I can't believe that this is past, and I just had so many questions. I want to know more about like what this is, how this is, and how this happened, like, and how long this takes. So I'm excited for you to kind of, it's an unfortunate event, but I'm excited for you to learn a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so this brain amoeba, this brain infection, it's a very rare parasite. And the parasite is actually called Naegleria fowleri.
Oh, it's got one of those fancy
names. Genus species type names, and it's a naturally occurring amoeba, believe it or not. That's actually what's kind of scary. It lives in fresh water and more tendency in the warmer area.
Yeah, that's probably why I like Texas and Florida. We're pretty high up
and
there
so
too.
it's crazy because I myself have jumped into like fresh waters when I was out in Florida when I was training out there, and it's a risk you have to, you assume or you take.
You don't even think about it.
No, you don't.
You don't think about it.
And it's true. Like as a guys go underwater more, and we we submerge our heads underwater, so that actually what makes it a risk. So you're not going to believe how this amoeba enters the body. It enters through your nose.
That's why you keep mentioning the nose.
Yeah, it enters.
I'm very glad that I don't want to get my hair wet now.
It enters through your nose, and it hits the nerves that are in your nose, pretty much the nerves that you use to smell, and travels up that nerve into your brain and starts to literally infect and eat your brain.
That's what it does. I was going to say, how does it do that?
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You wouldn't know you had it. You could have inhaled it, but traveled up your nose in, and you just keep swimming and just keep enjoying your day, and then.
When does it start? Like when do you start noticing things?
In a couple of days, you'll start noticing fever and headache, and then you'll start having like neck stiffness and neck pain. It can start even up to a week or two later, but really within the first a couple of days, 3 to 4 days, especially the severe cases, and people can die, or they do die within 4 to 5 days of those symptoms. That's what's crazy about it.
So is it going in and physically eating away at our brain, or is it causing an infection?
It's causing like an inflammation of the brain, and that's the disease is called amoebic meningoencephalitis.
Okay.
And so it's basically infecting various parts of the brain, causing symptoms that kind of resemble meningitis. So, the kids come in to the hospital and they look like they have meningitis.
And it can happen to anybody. This story has just happened to me.
Really,
but it can happen to
anybody at any age. And so the patient will come in and they'll have these symptoms that look like meningitis. And, the doctors will treat for meningitis and nothing works. And then within a day or two, they're dead, depending on when they come in and how long they took to come in. Because they're not tests that you run for it, like to diagnose it. And unfortunately, the patient is like they're having seizures, they're in a coma, so they can't even tell you that they were in fresh water. And whoever brought them in would have to know to say that.
Yeah.
It's weird. Like when you go to the doctor and you have a problem, you don't say, "Oh yeah, I jumped in the lake 4 days ago for half an hour." Like that's not something that you think to say.
Yeah.
And so that's what's really scary about it.
It seems like it's not this is a man-made lake, but in general, it seems like body of water natural,
it should be okay.
It can't hurt me.
And the amoeba is, you can't see it, so you don't know it's there.
That's gotta be why it's so rare.
Yeah,
right?
You don't know it's there, and by the time the diagnosis comes, it's really too late.
And is it you can only get it through the nose?
That's really the only way we know you can get it, and any other way you would ingest it or you'd eat it or you'd drink it, it won't cause those same problems.
So it's not something you need to quarantine.
No,
I'm just clarifying.
You can't. It's definitely
after COVID, I feel like that's everybody's first questions that we start to get is what do I need to do now? How do I prevent it from spreading?
If someone has it, they're not going to spread it. They're not going to spread it.
Absolutely. So I'm just thinking about whatever our listeners thinking.
Yeah. And then there was some thought that it could live in the soil. I don't know if that's true or not, but really they think it's in the soil because of the water used to water the soil.
Yeah.
Not because it's actually living in the dirt or anything like that.
And I'm sure there's got to be because Texas and Florida are a little higher because of the warmer water. I'm sure there's got to be an increase during the summer months as well.
Oh, absolutely. But again, it's just so rare. There's no real patterns for it.
Yeah. But so does this mean it's not just if it's in fresh water,
it won't be in the ocean.
No. I'm saying so it's not just lakes and rivers, hot springs and stuff. It could be in our tap water.
It can be in your tap water from when you shower in it. Yeah,
right. Our pools,
your shower, water used for showering.
Unless you've got a fancy sea salt pool, that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, we should.
I would love
do
that
it now.
Yeah,
do it now.
Can I put that on my
any kind of water parks? It can be, because that's all.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. Water parks, yeah.
That's tap water too, right? So
I always think about there's some kind of bacteria and whatnot there, but it's mostly because I'm always thinking about the people peeing and everything.
Well, yeah, but pee is sterile. There's no bacteria.
Yeah, I know, but you still
believe it or not, pee is clean. Isn't that
I
crazy?
guess, yeah. You gotta be.
I'm not afraid to
throw that science.
I'm not
back
afraid
in
to pee.
there.
Yeah,
I think we're just trained to think
pee's dirty. Pee's not dirty.
Swimming in a pool of pee sounds dirty. And I know that they have chlorine and stuff there, but
pee is sterile. Pee is clean.
I still
People's
don't want to swim.
Skin is dirty. People are dirty.
But these parasites are not clean.
They're not. No. And so,
oh my gosh. So sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't even mean to interrupt you.
No. Go ahead.
But if it's at water parks too, this means okay. So I work with a lot of parents, so that's why my mind goes to this. Real quick, that means your at-home splash pads and water tools that you use for sensory plays or things like that. If you gotta wash that stuff, it could be on anything.
It can go. Yeah, it's got to get in through your nose,
I didn't
and
think of that.
It's wild. But yeah, it's got to be always going to be in warmer temperatures, warm waters. So anywhere between anything greater than 70 degrees, really.
Okay, yeah, that's that covers pretty much everywhere I've ever lived.
Fair enough. It covers actually every place, right? So it's summertime, even in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's 70 degrees. Yeah, so, but yeah, this bacteria, Naegleria fowleri.
So how does it? How does it survive?
Parasite. What's that?
How does it survive? How does it get there? And how does it survive?
It's just an organism. It lives. It eats small bacteria. Other bacteria. It just resides in lakes and rivers and feeds other bacteria and feeds off other bacteria and just lives. And it they can just live, and it's absolutely, fatal. There are some treatments that are coming out for it, but you just don't know to give it because you don't know that they have it.
Yeah.
And, you can't give
Yeah, I can
antibiotics because that's not
imagine.
gonna kill it.
They could probably just, like, the only way to know is, like, to test the waters, and by the time all those testings come back,
Yeah.
it's too late because,
Well,
this happens
you
pretty
can't even test
quickly,
the water.
right?
You can't even
Because
test the water because you're not going to capture the amoeba in the water. There's not like a million of them there. There's just a few of them. So you
yeah,
take that cup of water. Let's say you go into the lake and take a cup of water out. You're not going to find that amoeba in that cup of water. That's not really
that's
possible.
a good point too.
And just testing for any kind of brain infection like this is, there's not much out there for it, and that's the worst part. Like, regular meningitis, we know how to test for it, but this, it's not something that we routinely test for, and that's what's scary about it.
Yeah, and it's like by the time you start to, I mean, how much time do you really have? I
mean, within 5 days of your symptoms, people are dead.
Wow, within 5 days of their symptoms or 5 days of like being exposed, like because your symptoms you said could go from like 1 day to like a couple weeks,
like a couple weeks. So really, but the death will occur within 5 days of you showing symptoms.
Okay, so I was like, oh, do you even show symptoms? And like, what if people pass away without showing symptoms?
You'll have headache and neck stiffness, and then you'll start getting confused and have nausea and vomiting, and
the symptoms come.
Yeah, think about it. Like, you're not going to come to the hospital on the first day of having a headache. Like, who does that?
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was one of those things where maybe you go first and then you're like, we had no signs.
I've never heard of that before, but again, there's only been 100 and
that's
something
also
cases. So that's not like a huge sample size.
This is me overthinking everything.
Well, I mean, brain infections like this have always like stumped, doctors in medicine, even for years, for hundreds of years. Really, meningitis is the main one we always knew. There was a disease they found it like in the 60s, I think. They found a population of people that were like losing their mind. And it was out in Papua New Guinea, a country.
What?
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's an island country just kind of north of Australia, just in the Indian Ocean out there. And they found these people were like losing their mind. And they're like, why are they doing this? And they didn't know why. And well, they were like, let's study these people and see what they do. And they had this ritual where they would eat the brains of like people that have died. So they didn't kill people and eat their brains, but they ate the brains of people that died. And they found these diseases, or they found these people were losing their minds. And so they had this infection. And it's not the same one here, but the reason why I'm talking about this is because all these rare brain infections, the testing for it has come because of this condition. Like,
oh, wow.
They created these tests because of this odd condition. Because they were like, hey, regular meningitis is not the only thing out there that attacks your brain. And so that's kind of how like we started to look for other parasites and other kinds of things that cause, rare brain conditions. And this, Naegleria fowleri being one of them. But yeah, it travels up your nose, up the nerves in your nose into your brain, and starts to cause infection and basically eats your brain.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's ridiculous. There's not even not every lab even actually has a test for it, is the worst part. So
that's just,
if you go to a smaller hospital, let's say somewhere in a small town, they have to send that sample to somewhere else. That could take days and days. Like, that patient is dead because they won't have the labs back. It's crazy.
I can't believe that. It doesn't sound like a good way at all to go. I mean, not that any way is good, but I definitely, I feel for the family. I don't feel like any parents should have to outlive their child. That it's got to be such a shock.
Yeah, and it is. And like, people ask, is there a vaccine for it, or is there anything you can take for it to prevent it? No. Unfortunately, the answer is no. I mean, vaccines are for viruses,
things that kind of just
and
happen.
Antibiotics are for bacteria. So you really can't stop a parasite from entering and doing what it needs to do until you already have it. And then there are some anti-parasite drugs, but there's not too many out there for this one. And although we are creating, by we, I mean like researchers, not me, but like, or you, but like, they are trying to create more ways to stop this, rare infection.
Wow.
So this infection is extremely fatal nearly 100%.
It sounds it.
Yeah, but guess what? It's also nearly 100% preventable.
What?
Yeah, so think about it. I mean, if you can, you can.
It happens naturally. How can we prevent it?
Well, because you can protect yourself from
Oh,
Either
okay.
don't jump into
Prevention
water, or don't jump into water that gets up to your, up your face, into your, water gets
into
in your
your
nose,
nose.
or
Yeah.
plug your nose up.
So no
Obviously,
diving.
sometimes 100% preventable, because if it's like in your shower water and it gets in your nose, like no one wears nose plugs in the shower,
Yeah.
but at
Or
least
maybe
like
somebody does.
jumping into body. I'm sure some people do, but jumping into bodies of water and just being aware of how deep it is, and just how clean the water is, or how
And probably like the
if you live
temperatures
in a
too.
warm area, like just be aware.
Be more careful around the summer months.
Diving
Don't
head
dive
first
in the summer.
will do it. Yeah, so
all right, that makes sense.
Because it goes up your nose, right? And so they're also, because the amoeba, because it does live in the dirt, also in the water. If you think about it, there is dirt in water, right? And so it's on the ground of the water. So maybe like water that's not stirring up the dirt, that can help you out.
Yeah.
And climate change can be a factor too. As temperatures rise and the water temperature in the lakes rise, it can make that area more prone to having that amoeba. So choosing your bodies of water if you're gonna jump.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go diving,
when you're gonna do
choosing it wisely.
Not in the summer.
Knowing that the amoeba can be more, available in those kind of bodies of water. Okay.
Well, what does this mean for Lake Mead right now?
I mean, it's just
the national park system.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're, doing their own investigation and like checking into, everything they can do to prevent things. Like, it's kind of
right. But swimming in a lake is that can have organisms. It's a risk, and it's the environment of that organism.
You got to assume the risk when you're going into it, for sure. But like for Lake Mead though, like right as of right now, they're not closed, right?
No.
Yeah, and it's not something that you really can like put a sign up, because it doesn't mean that it's going to be like right there in that spot. And then like you could be 10 feet over and not have a sign or whatever, and somebody might misread it. Like that's that's not one of those things. You just have to assume the risk and be into it.
It's just floating around the water.
And I'm just like trying to make that point where it's like, hey, why can't they do more? They can't really do that.
You can't.
Like,
you absolutely
can't really put a sign where
exactly.
But if anybody definitely would like more information, because I know that this was very interesting to me, we have in our show notes all of our references, of course, but also a link to the CDC where they give like an information page, explains our little brain eater guy. What was his name again?
Naegleria fowleri.
Yeah, him.
Great name.
That guy. That brain
great
eater.
Name.
But yeah, again, my condolences are out
absolutely.
to the family.
That's horrible for the family, to what they're going through, and this young individual.
It's awful.
Suffering from this, yeah.
And I know, like, we talked about all of this and, like, safety from here forward, though. I heard the news stations when I was, like, walking by, and I had heard the story to begin with, say that it can't get in our drinking water here in Las Vegas. And if anybody doesn't know that, like, our drinking water from Las Vegas comes from Lake Mead. So I know recently, in those last couple months, like, I don't even know if it's the last couple months. It could be even the last couple weeks. It's, like, super recent. They just brought up the 6th body out of Lake Mead.
What? Body?
Like a dead body.
Oh dear God, there's that there too.
Yeah. And I do like we're gonna end up doing like a episode series like on the murders of Lake Mead for sure. So I definitely think that will be. Oh, there's so much, and Lake Mead's got such a history of it. Because you got to think like the mob throwing like bodies. I don't know if that's like actually true. I just like know stories that I've heard.
I mean, I guess people dump bodies.
And you got to remember like that the mob was huge in Vegas, like, and then like I'm sure there's a ton of crackheads that are probably doing things like that too. I don't know. But we're going to be definitely researching and covering it all. We've kind of been in the process a little bit, so that'll be coming up. Something to look forward to.
Or not look forward to.
Yeah. Just for a slight not entertainment, for learning purposes.
It's all about education.
Yeah. So we know how to kind of go on from there. But man, your story was definitely pretty interesting, and I feel like it hit really close to home.
Well, we live here.
But
so yes, actually it did hit close to home.
I'm about to blow your socks off.
I'm not wearing any socks.
Are you not?
I am. I'm just joking.
Oh, I had to look. You're listening to YogiDoc, a podcast powered by TeleThrive. TeleThrive provides occupational therapy services in multiple states while specializing in sensory integration, social emotional regulation, feeding therapies, neuromotor disorders, and pediatric neurodevelopmental disorders, which include ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, and so much more. On this podcast, our healthcare providers become your best friend. Thanks for tuning in to YogiDoc. Now, let's get back to thriving. All right, I'm back from my pee break. Are you ready for this?
And we just said that.
It needed to happen.
All right.
All right. But like we said, not to glorify, but to learn, right? And
Always.
Today's episode is definitely focused on our brain eaters. So we had our brain eater parasite, apparently our brain eater culture situation, country, people,
Papua New Guinea,
place. Also, surprise guest us that showed up.
This is Kuru.
But
Best name.
my story with Jeffrey Dahmer, so they've confirmed that he's confirmed or whatnot that he's eaten some of the flesh. So I would definitely say cannibalism. And he kept brains in the jar, in jars. And there's a little bit more brain stuff kind of going on towards the end a little bit, but there's no exact confirmation if he was exactly eating the brains, but they only found some of the brains of the story, so we can only assume that he's eating all of the scenarios. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and I'm going to just, let me start not completely at the beginning, but let me start somewhat in the middle to give you a little bit of an idea. You ready for this?
Not really.
Okay. So,
I'm scared.
A big part of why I wanted to do this episode, on a side note, is because, obviously Netflix came out with a huge series lately. Hulu did. Everybody has come out with their version of the story, right? And I've seen a lot of people post online about, hey, I can't get past the first episode. It's just too much. It's too gruesome. It's too much. So I was thinking, if we covered it in somewhat of a way in our story, in our podcast form, people could still hear the story, but maybe without the visual, it's a little bit more to tolerate if you're still interested in knowing the story, whatnot.
That makes sense. Okay.
So there's a little bit of that portion to it. So I just want to say that from the very beginning, this is going to be a difficult story to hear because people cannot even watch it on the documentary. There's a ton of people posting everywhere. I can't make it past the first episode. I can't even get through it. And I turned it off after a couple of minutes. This is too much to handle. So just buckle up. You ready for that?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we're looking late at night, almost midnight, around 11:30 p.m. And we're looking in the summer of 1991. These two Milwaukee police officers were stopped by an African-American man who had this frightened look on his face. He was he had handcuffs dangling from his wrist. He just looked like a mess. He had no shirt on. He was just kind of all over the place. And he was identified as a man in his early 30s. And requested the officer's assistance. He told him, dude, I've been drugged by somebody. I was restrained by a freak. He called him a freak. I was restrained by a freak. And he's I can't get these handcuffs removed. I'm trying to get away. Help me, please, right? And the officers, kind of first looked at the situation, kind of laughed a little bit about it and thought maybe, some kind of lover's quarrel, whatever. They're just, whatever the situation is. It's not the greatest of neighborhoods. Who knows what's going on? What the situation. It could be anything.
Could be anything, yeah.
And they just kind of brushed it off a little bit. But then they realized that their key can't open the handcuff.
Wait, do officers' keys open all handcuffs?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just thought that was a crazy, interesting fact. I don't know. So, because that's the small little piece that threw them off, right? Because they were just going to uncuff it and leave and just even though he said he was restrained by a freak and all this other kind of stuff, they were just done with it, right?
Yeah, well, just
and
thought there was
now they got to do more. right? It's like, what do you mean it's not working? The key's not working. So they agree, all right, fine, we'll accompany you back. We'll go to the apartment where he claims to have escaped from. And before you know it, it is evident that he was very lucky to be alive.
It sounds like it. Yeah, that's just crazy that he actually got away, that means,
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So, and this is where it begins. This is where it all unravels. Not begins, I should say. This is where it all unravels. And so this gentleman and the two police officers, the trio, they are greeted at this apartment, at the door of the apartment, by a 30-year-old, quite tall, some would say nice-looking man. And we're going to call him Jeffrey Dahmer.
We're going to call him that? That's him.
That's him.
Okay.
This man's going to be called that. So, the officer just right off the bat, generic, kind of like, hey, what happened? What's going on? And he didn't deny that he restrained the gentleman at all. He was accepting of that. Like, he didn't, contest it in any sort of way. But he also didn't care to explain, like, why or whatnot. He was very just straight to the point kind of with that. And so the gentleman had told the officers that after placing the handcuffs on him, because this is like when he comes out with this, and he's like, he had said that Jeffrey had threatened him with a knife and mentioned that he wanted to eat his heart.
I can see why people couldn't watch this show. Okay.
So he wanted to eat his heart.
Okay.
Insane. I would be like, I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do in this situation. Like, how did you get back there? How did you get in this situation? How do you know him? What's going on, right? And so Jeff...
what's he tell the officers? How did he know the guy?
Yeah, well, so at this point, like, they didn't ask any of those questions. They didn't know any of those things right now, right?
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
And so, like, well, if you watch, like, the documentaries, they show, like, part of it. But, like, right now, as the officers are, like, approaching, they don't know what they're approaching into, right? And Jeffrey just, like, completely ignores his claims and, like, what he's saying, and just kind of directs one of the officers to the bedroom where he says I keep the handcuffs on the bedroom dresser. And so the officer walks over, steps into the room, completely disheveled, but, like, you're focused, right? You're just going for one thing. People's stuff is your business. Not completely, like, nosy looking around just yet. But he goes, like, and walks over to the bedroom stand, and he notices that there's, like, a large knife underneath the bed. And he's still not, like, totally worried yet until he turns to the dresser where the key's supposed to be on, and the drawer is slightly open. And when it's slightly opened, he is shocked by what he finds inside.
Wait, okay? What's he find inside?
So inside are a bunch of Polaroids. Do you remember Polaroids?
Polaroids? Like pictures?
I have Polaroids.
Oh, like when you click it, it comes out?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still have one of those cameras. But so he opens up the drawer, and he finds a bunch of Polaroids of dismembered human bodies. In, like, unnatural positions.
So he took pictures of the
Yes,
stuff he did?
And there's, like, a ton of them.
Oh, geez.
And as he walked back into the living room to show the Polaroids, like, over to his partner, he mumbles, like, the words, like, these are real. Like, he's just shocked. He's like, dude, these are legit.
Yeah.
Like, this is not, like, this is not messed around with. So at this point, Jeffrey Dahmer, we'll call him Dahmer, realizes that, like, he's got no way to talk himself out of the situation. What are you really going to say, right? You can't really...
They're fake? Yeah, I don't know. You can't.
Yeah, you can't really talk anything out of this situation at this point.
Run like hell?
So then he tried to fight the officers off and escape. So that's exactly what he tried to do, run like hell. But they eventually overpowered him. They handcuffed him.
Oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah. They took him down. Yeah. And now they had reason to, like, search this apartment without a warrant, right?
Without a warrant, yeah.
So they walk through, they go over the refrigerator. Inside, like, they find several severed human heads.
Oh, God.
Wait, I think only one in this refrigerator. I think they find more later on.
Oh,
so geez. They find a severed head, and, like, they don't know what they're in for, right? You just think that you're, like, answering a call on the street. You're just, like, cruising around. You're finding human heads.
Yeah.
Right? And these photos and everything that's around. And And the stink and the stank they must have had in that apartment.
Oh, of decaying bodies.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes, they probably did not expect that they were stumbling into this.
No.
So they go ahead and they take him over to like the police headquarters in downtown Milwaukee. Okay. So then they had the homicide detective come over. But, of course, he's not sure what to expect either. Like,
does anyone?
Not very many people have met anybody like Dahmer. Like, you train for this scenario, but, how many opportunities do you get to play that out? So no matter how much experience he has and like what he's learned about his interview skills or anything like that, like nothing can really prepare you for this. So even though Jeffrey like resisted arrest originally, at this point, like he's too far in, so he just informed the detectives that he just wished to waive his rights to a lawyer, and he was fully confessed to all of his crimes.
So he's not trying to deny anything.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I created this. Now I gotta end it,
Oh, wow. Okay. So
yeah.
he was done.
Him, I created this, so now I gotta end this. All right. So now, like we mentioned, Dahmer says, like, I'm gonna confess. I'm gonna end it. I created this, and it's over. So over the next 2 weeks, a total of 60 hours of interviewing Dahmer. And he admitted to murdering 16 young men and 15 in Milwaukee, and one of them was in Ohio, where it all started.
That's crazy. And he's cutting off heads and he's cutting out brains.
That can't be too easy.
You know how hard it is to cut into a skull? A skull is extremely tough to dissect. Yeah, that is. What kind of tools does he have?
I know. It seems like it would be hard. I would like to think so, but I'm going to take you all the way back, right? Like how it all began, right? So we're going to go back late 70s to begin with. So we're in like 1978, and Dahmer's about barely 18 years old, right? He's still living at home with his parents.
He started as a kid?
He's barely 18.
Oh, dear.
I didn't say that. Let me tell the story first. Maybe he didn't start yet. Maybe I'm telling something young. No, he started young.
Oh, dang.
But so he was still living at home with his parents, and he would like just, head out and buy alcohol, and he was like totally drinking a ton most days. And at this point, like, so I guess like growing up as a kid, he didn't have like the greatest relationship. His parents didn't have the greatest relationship. And so they end up divorcing around this time, and the dad wasn't living at home, and the mom had some of her own personal issues and situations that were going on, and picked up and left, and essentially left Dahmer alone by himself.
So he had the house to himself.
Yeah. So he kind of like had the house to himself at this point. His mom was gone during the summer. She just like picked up and left. Nobody told the dad. Dad never checked in on him. So he's just like drinking, getting drunk most of his days, doing whatever the hell
and his dad didn't actually know he's alone at home.
Doesn't know.
That's wild. Okay.
Yeah. And so he's just like learning how to fend for himself at this point. And like growing up too, he just watched his parents fight a ton, and he didn't have a lot of connection with his mother, but he did have more so with his father, right? And they used to spend time together. Can you guess what they used to do?
I mean, I hope not kill things.
They used to dissect roadkill.
Oh, God.
So they weren't doing the killing.
They weren't doing the killing, but they weren't cutting open things?
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's like, he's dabbled in this, like, at this point, but not in a way of, like, where he's, like, killing things yet, or at least that I know of.
But he's cutting stuff open
at this point. But, yeah.
Young age.
It was, like, a hobby thing. And I think, like, I want to say that his dad was like some kind of like scientist or something. And like, so, you take those classes, you dissect like a frog or like.
We did that in school.
So I think that's like the mindset. Like I'm teaching him about it. Maybe he's going to be a doctor one day, or, I don't know. So that was probably the mindset.
My dad just taught me math. Go learn algebra.
Yeah. Well, the dad was like probably just like looking for something to spend time with his son,
I guess. Okay.
And he didn't want to be around the mom too much. So that was something that they did a ton. But yeah, so he's home alone, right? So he doesn't really know how, like, what to go. Like, he's not following a structure. He's just kind of getting drunk. He's like doing whatever he wants. He goes out to go buy beer. And on his way back, he finds this old hitchhiker. And so this hitchhiker dude is like, hey, I'm going to head to this rock concert. I want to go to this rock concert. And he's like, well, you know what? I'll take you there. And he's like, well, what time you got to be there, right? And he starts, talking back and forth. And then he's like, why don't you come back to my house for a few beers and then I'll take you to the concert. So
fair.
Dude's like, sure, I got some time to kill, like, oh, bad pun. I've got some time to spare.
Okay.
And he's
Wordplay.
like, yeah, that just came right out. But he's like, I got some time to spare. I can use a few beers before a concert. Let's do this, right? So Dahmer, like, as he's like doing these interviews, right, he explains later to the detective that this hitchhiker was bare-chested and attractive, just to give like a little image on it in any sort of way. But so he thought, like, I'm going to take this guy back. We're going to have some beers and we're going to hang. But as soon as the hitchhiker started talking about girls, Dahmer started to realize, like, not all of his fantasies are going to come true. So still, Jeffrey, like, welcomed the hitchhiker into his home. They spent a couple hours listening to music, drinking, talking, hanging out before he had to take him to this concert. But inevitably came to the time where, like, the hitchhiker was like, dude, I gotta go, right? And he's like, what's happening? I gotta go. And something triggered him, and I don't know if it's like the abandonment in him or whatnot,
he didn't want to leave.
He didn't want him to leave. And so, like, that triggered him, and he picked up a 10-pound dumbbell and hit him over the head.
In the head?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Oh, yeah,
yes.
You're not surviving that.
Yes. Okay. So then, like, this happens at this moment, right? And then, like, later in the interviews, as, like, Dahmer's talking about it, he tells detectives later, like, he had that initial adrenaline rush and he still felt that, like, paranoid feeling. And so then he would, like, lay next to his body, the hitchhiker's body, for like a long time. And then he went and masturbated all over it.
That's just there's like a biochemical neurotransmitter problem in the brain there.
Yeah. He didn't want
that
to leave.
dopamine release.
He knocked him out. And I don't think he meant to kill him. I think he, like, just meant to, like, he kind of keep him there. And he just ended up dying and he didn't know what to do. And so, like, he had this, like, rush and then he started freaking out, like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't mean for this to happen or whatnot. Or who knows? I feel like it was like a reaction to being, like, abandoned in a way. But then he, like, lays with it for a while, like, lays with his body and then masturbates on it. So I'm like, well, dude.
There's some neurohormonal problem going on for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
wow. I don't know. I actually don't even know.
And then once he was satisfied, he began his ritual that he now establishes with dissecting a human body. So, yeah. He had to get rid of the evidence in general, but it was a sexual experience for him too. Like, taking apart the body.
Yeah.
So, like, It was, like, the masturbating didn't just end, like, with the body. That he was continuously having these feelings, like, so that's why, like, as he didn't just break it down to get rid of the evidence. He, like, took his time with it and was thorough and, like, enjoyed it. He enjoyed the process of it.
Yeah.
Too much. So, this took him hours. But then he, like, eventually he ended up burying some of the remains in the shallow grave. He dissolved some of the flesh, crushed some of the bones, kind of did a few things like that. But, man, and he was so young, and he was alone in that house. Like, nobody knew what was going on, right? And so, like, those gruesome details of just his first killing, like, it terrifies me, but it even terrified him at the time. Like, he tells the detectives, like, he was freaked out, insane. Absolutely insane. I'm sure the detectives were really thrown off too. Probably like a hard story for them to hear.
Oh, for sure. It's hard for anyone to hear. Yeah.
So it even freaked him out, like, because he took a long break before he had his next victim. I don't think the first one was really premeditative or anything like that. It wasn't expected. So he like probably was like, holy cow, what did I just do? And so he had a little bit of a break. And so after he got that first taste, right, his dad finally found out that he was living alone. He was going to go tell his dad, but then like his dad was like helping him with news, and he never ended up admitting to his dad about it, because his dad ended up helping him like try to get his life back on track, help him get into a university, because he was just, being a lazy drunk essentially. And his dad was like, no, we've got to do more. So he tries to get him into the university, which eventually Jeffrey drops out of, right? One term. He gets one term done, but he drops out because of his heavy drinking. He can't control his drinking at this point. So next, they decide, well, we're going to ship you off to the army and let them make a man out of you,
Okay.
So like, we're going to ship you off to the army. And so he served for 2 years, and then he ends up getting in trouble there again. And he gets searched unsuitable for military service due to alcohol abuse.
I mean, yeah, and
Because
that's they do dishonorably discharge for alcohol use all the if that's an issue, and they look at the pattern of drinking, and there's too much alcohol too often, and they also have to look to see, and people always ask, like, well, what is alcohol abuse? But it's also using alcohol to function. Like if you get up in the day and instead of coffee you have alcohol, like you need to start your day with alcohol, that's a red flag. Or if you can't function, it becomes that. So yeah, I definitely needed to get help.
Yeah.
Anyone.
Well, and then that definitely I kept seeing this alcohol and his drinking kept coming up, and I wonder how much does that play a role? And so I had to look up stats, of course. And so roughly about 40% of convicted murderers were under the influence of alcohol when they took somebody's life. About 40% of those that are convicted.
Oh wow, that's a really high number.
Yeah, it's not that the alcohol is doing it, but it's
a common factor.
But it is a common factor.
Oh wow.
So not only does it influence you to commit more violent acts, but it can also escalate the severity of those acts. And so I think that's why that's a factor as well. So I don't know. His dad tried to do as much as he could. He was very unsuccessful in the fact of trying to get his son to stop drinking. He was definitely trying to make effort of it. So then at this point, Dahmer goes to live with his grandmother. Sweet grandmother that he loved so much.
Oh, man.
Everybody loves grandma, right? But so he...
I just sniffled.
Oh, I thought you were laughing at me. All right. So he goes to live with his grandmother, and, we're hoping that this motivates him, just having her as a positive influence in his life. And it seems to work at first. He goes with his grandmother to church. He helps her around the house, and he even gets a job. But he gets his first job, by the way, at the Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center.
Plasma.
He gets his first job at the Milwaukee Plasma Center.
Okay.
Oh, man. I cannot imagine. And then he later gets a job as a chocolate factory mixer.
Chocolate factory mixer? They don't have any standards there, I guess.
I don't know.
I guess they don't know what he's doing yet, so that's true.
Well, he's getting kicked out of everything. So, what's really his background? I'm not talking about that, but I'm you go from a blood bank to a chocolate factory. That's more of what stood out to me, and I was like, okay. But, I'm sure most people thought he was living a pretty normal life, but it can't last forever when you've got those demons inside of you.
Yeah.
So we go to the night in 1987, okay? And this is when Jeffrey, or Dahmer, whichever I should be calling him, Dahmer, he goes to visit a gay bar. Have you ever been to a gay bar?
No, I haven't actually.
They're definitely fun.
Fun for him, I guess, too, huh?
Yeah. Okay. Side note. And it's nice because nobody, the dudes don't flirt with you. You could just get a drink and chill. I don't know.
Girls just hate getting flirted on at the clubs, is that it?
Just you. Yeah, so. All right. But on this night at the gay bar, it wasn't as fun. So in 1987, we're at this gay bar and he meets this mid-20s male. And due to the fact that since Jeffrey, he's like living with his grandmother, right? So he's got no place to kind of go back with a male friend. And so he rents a room at this hotel that's like right there by the gay bar. And, it's kind of like a little motel setup kind of situation. And they head there and they keep drinking and they keep drinking. And Dahmer tells the detectives, like, hey, I wasn't planning on killing anyone that night. That wasn't my intentions. I woke up the following morning and he was dead.
Oh, okay.
With his chest crushed in.
Okay. That's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
normal.
Dahmer says he's got no memory whatsoever of what had happened. So he panicked, but he managed to move the body to his grandmother's house. Now he's got another house with a body in it, right? He dismembers it.
Oh my God, is the same thing again?
He disposes of it, but this time he keeps the head.
He keeps the head.
Yeah. So accident or not, something switched. Like whatever, the adrenaline that came with the second killing here at this point, something switched from that moment forward. So then he's like actively seeking out young men at the gay bar, and he's like luring them back to his grandmother's house. And for the pretext he's telling them, he's like, hey, we're gonna party, we're gonna drink, I've got money, like, come on back. And he's like charming these victims to leave with him, to leave the gay bar and go with him. And he gets there and he spikes their drink.
Oh, so he was drugging them. Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so there's like no way for them to leave like this house of horrors situation. Like, they're not leaving alive.
They're too intoxicated. And
yeah.
They're drugged, yeah.
They're just not leaving alive. And so, now we're looking at late spring 1990s, and he moves out of his grandmother's house, and we're talking about now he moves into the apartment. The same apartment that we started at with the two officers. Okay. So that happened in 1991. We're talking about 1990. So we're about a year prior to that moment. Okay.
You're back. Year before.
Yeah. So, he finally moves into that place and his victim count starts shooting up in numbers. Like it's just going up, right?
So at least grandma being around grandma, he couldn't do so much stuff.
He couldn't dismember. He couldn't do as much with her around. Like, he gets that apartment and bam, like, we're going up, right? And then I had read somewhere, and I'm like, I don't think this was part of like the documentary or some of the other things I've seen. I didn't see this everywhere, but I did read in one of the places that by the summer of 1991, he was at the stage of murdering approximately one person each week.
That's insane.
Yeah, as he's doing it each time, the rituals and the experiments, like, it's getting more and more disturbing. It's definitely getting more and more disturbing. So he retains parts of his victims' bodies. He's taking photos of the whole process of his dismemberment.
So he's no longer scared and freaked out like he was the first.
Yeah. Now he's seeking it. Now he's got that rush, and now he's seeking it. At that point, he started seeking it when he started going, like, after his second kill.
Right.
Like, the second one kind of like triggered that for him. And so, like, now he's trying to create these mindless sex slaves in a way. They're like, they can't leave him. At some points too, he drills holes in his victims' heads and injects like an acid or boiling water into their brains.
So it's torture. He's just trying to torture them. Wow, that's insane.
Like, it's, yeah, I don't even know. Like, that's what I mean by like his rituals are starting to get like
more and more disturbing.
Way out there.
And almost like detailed. Like that's a very detailed thing to do.
That's why he's so thorough, and he like thoroughly enjoys it in such the wrong way. It's like, there's something going on, right? And needless to say, the experiments or whatnot that he does on these victims with these holes in their head and whatnot, they're not making it. They die instantly or they fall into a coma. So then he would follow up by consuming the flesh and the organ.
Oh my God.
Yeah. In his own words per se, I'm going to paraphrase, but he talks about the cannibalism kind of started off as more curiosity, but it's also a way to make his victims permanently a part of him.
Oh wow, this is like a deep psychological,
That's what I'm saying. He's got the abandonment. He's got this
Yeah,
attachment showing
didn't
up
want to
here.
leave. Yeah, he didn't want
There's
to leave.
so much that I want to ask, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, here in a moment. But at the end, he manages to lure 17 young men. And by the way, one of these young victims is a 14-year-old, by the way.
Wow.
And when this situation had happened, he had tried to escape and officers had came. And so then his neighbor had called the cops multiple times about the stink in the apartment and something's going on over there. And they're just blowing her off, right?
Oh no.
And this young kid, they called and they could see that he's messed up. And Dahmer comes out and tells him hey, it's just a lover's quarrel. He's drunk. I'm trying to take care of him, blah, blah, blah. And they believe him over the neighbors and they never look into it further. So it's
also, the cops came when the guy was there and they put the guy.
The young one.
So the
kid,
the
youngest one, the 14-year-old.
14-year-old just went right back?
Went right back.
Oh man, because the cops let him.
Yeah.
Oh.
And they just so that's just a side portion on that we have to consider, but so eventually he lures 17 young men to their brutal death. At this point, if the officers had investigated just a little bit further, they would have found a lot of the bodies.
Oh, they would have found evidence there
in his apartment if they checked into it.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. And the boy ends up going back with him, right? Because he tells him hey, this is my boyfriend. And they try, and the neighbors are telling him hey, he's underage. And he's Dahmer's no, he's 19 years old. He's just really
the boy's
drunk.
So injured, he probably didn't even know what's going on.
Yeah, and he was so out of it. But he later dies, and Dahmer did inject his brain with hydrochloric acid.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So he's doing all sorts of experiments on humans right now. But if it wasn't for our young man that we started with, our handcuffed man in 1991, escaping, who knows how much this could have been
kept going
on for. Yeah. So because of that, he did save so many lives by getting away himself, but so many more people to come. And they find all of these things. I mentioned the severed head in the refrigerator. They find 3 more in the freezer. He had jars with genitals inside of them, 2 human hearts. He must not have gotten to eating those ones just yet. And so he lured 17 men back, but he's only charged with 15 of the 16 deaths because one particularly lacked evidence. So they didn't charge him with one.
Oh, wow.
So he pled guilty to all the counts. And he tried to use the insanity defense plea, which he was then later legally declared sane. So that didn't work for him.
Yeah, because they're saying that to be legally insane, you have to, it's a psychiatric evaluation and all these things, and they look to see if.
And you would think that somebody with this scenario has some kind of psychiatric issues, when you hear this story, but the requirements from the court are different. So it's some of the diagnosis that the courts considered for an insanity defense include schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder.
There's criteria and there's different things that qualify. Yeah.
Personality disorders and anything that's voluntary substance, intoxication does not usually qualify as an insanity defense. So I guess that was their point. But I also look at his traumatic upbringing and whatnot.
Well, that definitely has a play in this.
That's where I started having more questions because it's like I mentioned, he definitely had some abandonment going on. He definitely had some attachment to things. And, I mentioned earlier, like his childhood wasn't exactly the happiest. Like his parents were fighting consistently and he was often neglected. His mother like barely got out of bed. She was suffering from depression, which, at this time wasn't very common, but like now that we look back, could possibly be like postpartum depression from after she had like his brother and whatnot. There are reports talking about like how she was on medications while she was pregnant with Dahmer that, they're trying to say that might be able to cause some mental illness in him that he might be going through. I don't know. It's all over the place what's going on with the situation, but he had so much trauma and loneliness and definitely some confusion about his sexuality, what was going on, by the time his first kill came around.
I mean, I don't think we'd even know now, or ever know, but
There's
so much going on there.
That's
sure.
The thing is like, so I want to know, right? And they could study the brain and they can, you can't know everything. Like the brain is just so complicated, but they could study things and they could see like what has patterns and what has similarities and try to get an idea from that. And his mother was like 100% down for that. She was fighting for them to study.
Do like biopsies and stuff and examine the brain.
He was evaluated by a psychiatrist during the trial, and they diagnosed him with necrophilia, borderline personality disorder, schizotypical personality disorder, alcohol dependence, and a psychotic disorder. And so, even then, the diagnoses are still debated and whatnot, but there's definitely some manipulative, impulsive, irresponsible, I don't know, just something
atrocious
going on. Yeah. I mean, between the cannibalism and the attachments and the zombie-like sex slaves that he's making, like something's got to tie in with all of this. So this is the thing, right? So he spends all this time doing the interviews. He admits to and confesses to what's going on. They go ahead and they sentence him, right? And he gets 16 terms of life in prison.
16 life sentences?
Yeah. In 1992,
wow.
they made it official. He gets 16 life sentences.
Yeah.
And then he gets there and somebody shanks him in a way. Like somebody takes him down.
Oh, someone within prison just.
Yeah. So like he gets there, like he's there for a little bit or whatever, but somebody figured out like what he did or what was going on.
That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, he got taken down. And so like that's the thing is like I would love to know what's going on with his brain. I would love to study that. I would love to like learn more about that.
Like a biopsy.
Yeah, and his mom was like totally for it. For
testing on it?
For testing his brain.
Wow.
And it's like, so now that he's passed, right? Like this is
after he got shanked. Okay.
Yeah. So like let's test it. Let's see what can we learn, right? What is there to learn that we don't know already?
Right.
And his dad was not for that. So his dad denied it and refused. And they went to court about that. And his dad essentially won. So they did cremate him. So there is no more brain left to study. But I really like, what could we possibly have learned? Well, we'll never know.
Well, yeah, it's a lost opportunity then, I guess, too. I mean, how do you feel about that? Should they have studied the brain, do you think?
Like, the thing is yeah, I think so. I feel like that's part of the justice of the victims.
All the victims, yeah. I mean, people
you got to do everything you can to prevent that from happening again.
People and families are entitled, obviously, to protect their family and protect whatever they believe. But I do believe that it could always lead to some kind of
and I do understand like the parents have
advancement,
the rights. They have the property. They have the last word and the signature and whatnot in that perspective, and I totally get that. I totally understand that, but I also feel like maybe there could have been a fight on the other side too from it in the perspective of like the victims also deserve some kind of justice. Like, if we can learn something about this to be able to recognize and somehow prevent this in the future, we should take every opportunity we can to do so.
I absolutely agree. I think that's something that should be done. The right to say that over someone's life or anything like that.
Well, that is our episode on our brain eaters.
That was heavy.
It's a very
different
heavy
kinds
one.
of brain eaters, but that's heavy.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But it was heavy, but I'm glad we're back.
Yeah.
All right, high five. Virtual high five, because you just finished another episode of Medical Mystery Monday with YogiDoc. Did that go by way too fast for anyone else? If you want more or would like to be a guest, head over to our website to check out all of our show notes, our blog page, and even register for our newsletter. Don't forget to contact us. To join our community, check us out on social media at yogidoc.tt and show some love by hitting subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. Another way that you can show support to our podcast is through paypal.me/yogidoc and by checking out our Amazon recommendations. All links will be in the description. This has been a YogiDoc production powered by Telethrive. Until next time, explore your wonder and keep thriving.